Alright folks, we are going to make a fidget spinner. And this is going to teach us a little bit of how to do assemblies. So I'm going to start and I'm going to make a really simple fidget spinner. But maybe make it a little sexy cool too, right? So I'm going to start by sketching. And I'm going to make my fidget spinner just have 3 bearings. Okay, so I'm going to start by I want to make sure that my fidget spinner is not too long, right? So I really want this to be able to fit in my hand. So if I'm holding it at the center, I don't want more than 1.5 inches on either side, maybe 2 inches. So I'm going to make this 4 inches total, okay, and I'm going to make it 1 inch thick. I'm now going to add some holes here. So these holes are going to accommodate, they're going to give it a little bit of a look, right? So, and they're also going to accommodate the bearings. So if I've got one hole here, let me see what size this guy is. I'm going to kind of play with the diameter until I like how it looks. Right. And I'm going to copy that. Here. So 1.5, and one more over here. Okay, I'm going to start trimming this up so it actually looks like something. Use my trim entities tool. Oops. Okay. It's a little feisty on me. Now I'm going to add the center bearing. Alright, and you got to be careful that when you're putting in the center bearing that we make sure that we use the correct dimension of the bearing itself. And I don't remember that off the top of my head, so I'll make an adjustment later. But I think it's 0.685, but don't quote me on that, okay? So I am going to copy this. Oops. Never mind, I'll just remake them. Okay, and now I'm going to add a little bit of a fillet. Let's see what this looks like here if I do that. Cleanse it out a little bit. Maybe I'll make it a little bit heftier. Okay, so I've got myself my fidget spinner. Now I'm going to extrude it. So I'm going to extrude it out by 1/4 inch. If you're interested, we're going to actually wind up doing ours in wood, so I might make this a wood, have a wood appearance. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Actually, I'll just assign it a material. So if I go under materials, I can edit the material. And I can pick any material that I want. So I'm going to go down to wood, and let's call it a people. There we go. There's our wood fidget spinner. Alright, so I'm going to save this, and I'm going to save it as fidget spinner body. And the other part that I need here is actually the bearings, right? So I've got one center bearing and then two on the outside that are my inertial bearings, meaning they add just a little bit of weight and help keep the fidget spinner spinning. Those I can actually download from a website, so let me show you where I found them. There's my YouTube. If I go to McMaster Car, so you've got all kinds of options for bearings, right? And I went ahead and found you guys the bearing that's actually the one that we're going to wind up using. Right? It's a very cheap bearing, but let me just show you, if I wanted, let's say, this bearing here, just for an example, I could go under Product Detail, and I can actually download the SolidWorks file that goes with this, and it'll actually give me that part. So for a lot of standard hardware, like bearings and nuts and bolts and screws, you don't wind up doing a model for that. You actually import the parts. Okay, that saves engineers a lot of time. Alright, so I am going to now make an assembly, just like we did from our warm-up exercise. And I'm going to go ahead and add in the fidget spinner body. Okay, so there it is right there. And now I'm going to insert another component. And I have here, I'm going to give you guys this ball bearing. Alright, so it is called ball bearing. And this is what it looks like. There it is. So what I'm now going to do is make sure that this guy mates inside of this hole. So I am going to mate. I'm going to select a concentric mate between this guy and that guy. And now I'm also going to add a coincident mate and say that this top surface must be flush with that surface. You notice I definitely got my diameter wrong, right? So this should be a lot bigger. So let's actually do that. Well, actually, I'm going to wind up, I'll go into the ball bearing, and I'm actually going to take a measurement, okay? So what I'm doing is I'm opening up that part, okay? And I am actually just going to measure something. See if I can figure out what that, 22 millimeters is what it is. So let's do a conversion, put that in inches. I'm so glad it's updating. But it's 0.866. I actually just did it on my calculator. Okay, thank you. You can go right now. Alright, so I'm going to get out of this guy. Okay, and I'm actually going to come in here and edit this component. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and change on this. All of those holes. So I'm going to go ahead and smart dimension this to be different. So 0.8. Oops. So this is a nifty little trick. So I'm basically editing on the fly inside of my assembly, which is kind of cool. So when I'm done, I'll exit the sketch, and I'll exit editing component. You can see that that fits super nice now, right? That bearing fits in there real nice. Okay, now I've got to put two more versions of this bearing in. So I'm going to insert components again, and I'm going to browse, and I'm going to find again, the mate combination that I'm doing is concentric between this guy and this guy. And then I'm also doing a coincident between the two faces. This guy. Okay. And then the last one more time. I'm going to insert component. Put down that ball bearing. I'm going to mate it. So that's a complete model of my ball bearing. Just going to save it. And that's about where we want you guys to be on your fidget spinner. Okay, so we've got the fidget spinner body and then where the locations for your bearings inserted.